Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with accomplished author, screenwriter, and novelist Matt Witten. One of his latest projects is his novel, Killer Story, that is a mystery thriller set in the world of true crime podcasting. It all began for him writing poetry and then writing a play at the urging of his 10th grade drama teacher, Kramer, who he had a crush on. When he was 17 years old, he got an undiagnosed illness and vowed that if he ever got healthy again, he would remember that writing is central to who he is and that he should never give it up. Over the years, he's been on fascinating projects, written stellar novels, and is always moving on to the next big thing, like a pilot he's working on for NBC now, along with much more. He's here to tell you all about it. Enjoy this interview.
Hello there.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for taking a minute out.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So much fun to be on this podcast with all these other jazz musicians.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot going on. I've been branching out and doing all kinds of others, so I got a great community of people that are doing wonderful things like you. And before we get into that, I want to know, how did you survive COVID? You know, as a creative person, what was that time period like, and how did it change you now that we're kind of coming out of it?
I guess when I had COVID, I had plenty of time to write, so that was positive. The negative is that I really like to write in coffee shops, and the coffee shops were closed. And my favorite coffee shop in particular was closed, so it meant I had to write at home or else write in my front yard, and that was lonely. So I did not like that. Now I'm back at the coffee shops, and I've been back for a while because some of them opened up outdoors, so that was good again. But the toughest part was the isolation. Writing at home instead of at coffee shops was the most difficult.
Just to get a handle on what you do, if you were in front of a bunch of grade school kids for career day, let's say like fourth graders, and one of them looked up at you and said, "What do you do for a living, and how are you qualified to do it?" How would you answer them?
I would say I tell stories, and what qualifies me is that I like good stories, and I like to tell stories, and they make me happy. And any kid that enjoys telling stories and hearing stories and wants to try it, you know, on their own and try to write it up as a play or as a novel or as a short story or as a movie or anything, is very qualified to do it. Very democratic.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, how did these seeds get you? Talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how you got this desire to write and come up with good stories.
Well, I grew up in Baltimore, and when I was in first grade, I started writing poems about how the Baltimore Orioles would defeat the hated Yankees. And then I knew just from that I wanted to be a writer. But I actually had it in my mind that I needed to know a little bit more about life before I actually became a writer. So I didn't write much until 10th grade. And then in 10th grade, I had a crush on my high school drama teacher. And she suggested that I write a play. So I did. And I got the bug, started writing plays. When I was 17, I had an undiagnosed illness and had it for a few months. And I vowed to myself that if I ever got well again, that I would remember that writing is core to my being, and I would write. So when I fortunately did get well again, I stuck to it, and I've stuck to it for the past 45 years, except for one brief period where I was making zero money, and I did apply to law school. And as soon as I got into law school with a nice scholarship, I immediately got my first novel accepted, and then I got hired to write for the TV show Law and Order. And so I decided, well, I guess I won't become a lawyer after all. I will write about one on TV. But that was it. I've just stuck with my passion for the last 45 years, and I love doing it. And some years I didn't make much money, and I just stuck with it. I was very fortunate to have a spouse that supported me. When she was pregnant with our first child, we really had no money, and I decided that I would try to write a screenplay that I thought would be commercial. And what I really wanted to write was a one-man show about a homeless man that I met on the streets of Brooklyn. And I told her that. I said, I know I should be making money. I know I should be writing this movie that could be commercial. But, my heart is really in this other thing. And she said, God bless her, she said, no, write what you really want to write. Don't worry about it. Things will work out. So I wrote that one-man play, wound up being, out of all the things I've written in my career, probably the thing I'm most proud of or happy about. The real-life guy came to see the show and loved it, and it was performed all over the world. And I'm sure that if I had written this movie that I thought would be commercial, it would not have been commercial. It would have been dreck. It would have been junk. And so I've tried to operate from that mindset ever since. Write what you love. Sometimes that's not totally possible. I did have 2 kids I had to put through college, so I took a couple of TV writing jobs that I might not have taken just out of passion. But I've tried as much as possible to write what I love, and that's certainly what I'm doing now.
So we all have these seminal moments in our lives, that really sway us and inspire and make us want to do certain things. What was the book for you that you read that really either gave you that desire to want to write or part of the curtains on your love for reading?
I would say there were a few things. One was when I was 6 years old and I went to see the musical The Fantastics, and it really struck me. And what struck me more than anything was they did this one trick that at the end of Act 1, everything was going great, and they had an actor holding up a bright, shining yellow sun to show that everything was beautiful. And then they started Act 2 by just that actor he had the sun droop a little, and then somehow he changed the sun so it wasn't yellow, but it was darker. And that moment, the magic of that moment, being able to say something about life was such an economy. Something about it just amazed me. And then when I was 9 years old, I went to see the musical The Pirates of Penzance, and I just thought it was hilarious. That major plot point was that the guy had been told they got the will mixed up. The guy who died said, I want my son to be a pilot. But somehow they got it mixed up, and everybody thought he said, I want my son to be a pirate. And that, changed the guy's life. I just thought that was the most hilarious thing, and it just, stuck with me all these years. It's just such a hilarious plot point. I would say those 2 things, and then in terms of books, I would say as a kid, like everybody else, Dr. Seuss was, seminal for me, just seeing how imagination can be used in that way. I think One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish is one of the most brilliant books ever written. And then I would say when I got older, when I came across Elmore Leonard, I just ate his books up. I was amazed. That guy wrote such great dialogue, such realistic, terrific dialogue. He was so direct, so wonderful. I think Swag is one of the greatest novels of the last century. His book Swag. So in terms of my dialogue writing for TV and for novels also, I just have him as a model of how to do that. So those, I guess, would be my biggest influences. And then right now, I would say, since I'm writing psychological thriller novels now, I read psychological thrillers all the time. And I won't name, there's probably about 30 writers that I love reading. And for some reason, when I read these psychological novels, I always enjoy them, even though I'm in the field. Being in the field doesn't take away my childlike enjoyment of them. And my pleasure, I never get envious, even though some of these people write scenes. I was reading a scene yesterday by Colleen Hoover, and I was like, man, I could never write a sex scene as good as Colleen Hoover's, sex scenes. But I didn't feel jealous. It was I just enjoyed it. And so those are my influences now. I just, whatever I'm working on, I just love, reading or watching things that are similar to mine.
Who's consistently been a hero for you in your life? Who do you look up to, admire?
My biggest hero as a kid was Woody Guthrie. I loved his music, and I thought he was just a pioneer in folk music. I loved the way he lived his life. I loved his autobiography, Bound for Glory. He had such a good heart, a good heart of fighting for the common humanity, common man, common woman, and he just I admired him. I admired the way he traveled around the country. He was kind of Jack Kerouac, but I think a little less self-obsessed and had a little more heart. I mean, I like Kerouac too. But anyway, Woody Guthrie really was a hero for me. He's really the one that comes to mind for me.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, spend a little time and talk to them, who would it be? Who would you love to meet?
If I could talk to anybody who's alive right now, gosh, that's a really good question. Who would I want to see? Well, I guess in terms of like the good guys of the world, I guess I would like to see, Bernie Sanders and really spend time with him and talk with him. In terms of the bad guys, because villains are so interesting, I would kind of like to spend time with Trump, but I don't think I would be able to understand him. He has such a veil over him, who he really is, that I don't think it would really be fun or interesting in some ways. Putin would be another guy. I'd just like to see how he operates. Just, villains are interesting. In terms of artists, who would I want to see? I don't know. There'd be so many. I'm not really sure. God, it's funny. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. The first one that comes to mind for a living person is Bernie Sanders. Maybe AOC. Yeah, maybe AOC. I actually saw AOC and Bernie Sanders give speeches at an event 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, and it was really very special. So I guess I'd like to talk to both of them.
What do you look forward to every day with what you do? What is it that drives you, that makes you do what you do?
I like to get up in the morning, take a bike ride to my favorite coffee shop in Santa Monica, sit down, have some coffee, talk to my writer friends that are there, and then sit down and write for 3 hours. And, right now I'm working on a pilot for NBC based on a novel of mine. And what I really enjoy about it is that a couple things, but one is really the puzzle of it. Because when you're writing a TV pilot especially, it's like you've got so many characters, you have to fit them in just right, and especially if it's a network show like NBC, you have to have the act outs, the last scene of the act, just come about perfectly. So, you have things going to a crescendo of excitement before the commercial to make sure people come back after the commercial. Streaming networks, there's a little bit less of that. But for NBC, you've got to do that. And so it's just a puzzle to figure out how to end each act, how to start each act, to tell the story of everybody well, to have all your different characters, measured out well, one scene per act for each set of characters. And so I love the puzzle of it. And then the world that we're creating in this TV show is a fascinating world. It's set in the future, and it's a world where many people are largely owned by corporations. They're actually owned by corporations. And so it says something about the world that interests me. And then the three main characters of the show I really love. There were two of them I knew I would love, and there was one that snuck up on me, and I wound up loving her too. And I just think about them and tell their stories. So I love thinking about them. I love also going on walks with my wife in the evening and talking about the characters. And in this case, for this particular project I'm working on, I'm working with a collaborator named Charlie Craig, a showrunner named Charlie Craig, and I love working with Charlie. We just have a great time talking about the show, and I just enjoy working with them. And also the studio execs that we've been working with and the network execs, they're also very good. So one thing I've really noticed is that whenever you ask a TV writer or a movie writer, what's their favorite show or their favorite movie they've worked on, they never talk exactly about the best show they've worked on. They always talk about the best collaborative experience. So I guess I would say that what you really look forward to is collaborating. And it's a little bit different, or maybe very different from novel writing. When I'm writing a novel, certainly for much of the process, I'm working on my own, so I'm not collaborating with anybody. And it's just I just get interested in telling the story, how I can do it best, how I can show this one character's growth from one place, to the next, how they develop. Maybe they become shitheads for a while, but come out at the end becoming, even better persons than they started before. Whatever it is that their journey is, I like showing that. And the other thing I'll say is that I also enjoy being in writers' groups. I'm in a writers' group that meets most Fridays. That's mostly novelists, and another writers' group that meets once a month. And I enjoy sharing my latest writing with people, getting their feedback, and also, seeing what they're up to and helping them. And sometimes there'll be a novel. There's a woman in one of my writing groups, Harley Jane Kozak, who's also an actor, pretty well-known actor. And she's writing a novel that I'm convinced is going to be a bestseller. And it's just so interesting to see a project that is going to become great, and you're in on the birth of it. So anyway, those are some of the things I look forward to, the working with the other people, the puzzles, and just talking about these characters that I really get into.
So what's been one of the best fan letters you've ever gotten back from your work? What's something that you just remember that was really special?
Well, I remember the worst review I ever got on Amazon. So this is the opposite thing, but I just laugh when I think about it. For one book, I got this review from Amazon. This writer should be ashamed of himself. I'm not exactly sure. My guess is it's because I had some cuss words in the novel, and I think, but anyway, if you ever look on Amazon, I think it's my novel, Breakfast at Madeline's. I think it got that one. My favorite fan mail would be, well, not exactly fan mail, but when I wrote that one-person play about the homeless man I met on the streets of Brooklyn, when he came to see the show, when it came to New York, and he came to that first night's performance, and I was really scared how he would respond to it, had I done a good job of, telling his life. And when he responded extremely positively, actually what he did was he just started crying all the way through Act 1. And I felt, oh, my God, because a lot of terrible things happened in his life, in his childhood. I thought, oh, my God, I put him through this. And at the end of the play, he was supposed to get up on stage with me and do a talk back to the audience. And at the end of the play, I said, Greg, you don't have to do that. It's hard. He said, no, I want to. And he jumped up on the stage with me, and the two of us took questions from the audience, and we had a really interesting audience. Partly it was traditional audience, and partly it was people that were at homeless shelters, and people that he was Native American, so it was a Native American American Indian house in New York City, American Indian Community House, and also a rehab facility, the Phoenix House. So anyway, there are a lot of non-traditional people, and they just loved his play so much, and they said, thank you for sharing your story. You told my story. And he was just beaming, and he kept, he came to, I think, every performance for the entire 8-week run in New York City. And so in terms of a response, not exactly a fan letter, but that was my favorite response I've ever gotten.
If you have a dream tonight, you run into your 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give your younger version a piece of advice based on what you've learned throughout your life. And this isn't about regret. It's more about, kind of that fine wine wisdom, so to speak. What would you tell your younger version?
How did you start this? If I had a drink tonight and thought about it?
No, if you had a dream, like you were dreaming.
Oh, a dream.
Yeah.
Dream.
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I guess
no,
it could
it's
cross
funny.
politics. Yeah, what would you tell that young version? Yeah.
I would tell him to quit drinking.
See, that's perfect. Serendipity.
That's what I would tell him. I actually did quit drinking when I hit. I was 28 at the time, so I quit pretty young, so that's good. But I would have told him to quit even earlier. I think he would have had his 20s would have been easier. That's what I would have told him. But what else would I have told my 20-year-old self? Don't worry so much. It'll work out. Your writing career will be good. You're going to meet a good woman. You're going to have good kids. Don't worry too much.
Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, those in your writing groups, everybody that knows you in different capacities. But ultimately, you run the show. You live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I don't know. I guess, I think I'm a pretty good guy. I think I treat people pretty well. I think my first instincts in how to do things aren't always the accurate ones. But as long as I don't act on my first instincts and I wait, my second instincts on how to treat people and what to do in complex social situations are pretty good. I treat people pretty well. I have there's a fair number of people that I'm mentoring at this point, either in life or in writing, and that feels good. So I think that's become a big part of me. In terms of my writing, I don't know. I think, people, I don't know. I feel like people's perceptions of me are pretty accurate. I think, one thing that's happened in my writing lately is that I've kind of hit like this new energy level or excitement or something. I wrote for TV for about 15, 16 years straight and, made a lot of money. But so often wrote things that I didn't really care about, TV shows I didn't care about. And I kind of stopped doing that about 5 years ago. And the last 5 years have been, kind of amazing. I started writing novels. I had, one published last year. I have another one called Killer Story that's going to be published in January. I have another novel that's going out to publishers now. And, I just got this NBC job. And then last week I got another TV job, but these are projects that I love. These aren't like TV projects I'm doing for the money. These are projects that I love, and I feel like I'm writing really well now and freely, and I'm not worried about money. My kids are launched; they're making plenty of money, and I guess I feel like I'm in a really good place. So I guess my image of myself would be. I'm doing pretty effing well, right now. And I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but those are my thoughts, basically.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it. So, anybody out there listening to this that's curious about what you've written, they want to pick up your work, they want to know what's going on with you and your life, where's the best place on the web for them to go?
I'd say two things. One is to go to my website, which is mattwittenwriter.com. And the other is they can also look for my novel, The Necklace, on any whatever Amazon or independent publishing websites. They can look for The Necklace, which, by the way, was published last year, and it's now optioned for film by Leonardo DiCaprio, so that's exciting. And they can also look for my upcoming novel, Killer Story, which is going to come out in January. And speaking of podcasts, it's a thriller about podcasts. It's about a idealistic journalist who launches a true crime podcast to investigate the murder of an alt-right YouTuber she loved like a little sister, despite their political differences. And it's about the financial and ethical obstacles that true crime podcasters face and all journalists face. So anyway, those are the two books to look for. The one that came out last year and the one that's coming out in January. And that's the website that I have, mattwittenwriter.com.
Beautiful, Matt. This has been great, man. Thank you for opening up. Good luck with everything. Sounds like you got a lot of good going on. So it's good to hear, man.
Thanks, Joe. I really enjoyed your questions. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I just love being on your show that all these great jazz musicians have been on too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you're wonderful. Great cat. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, and music around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.